Hi, my name is Allison Dunn. I'm in Business Law 2150 at Appalachian State University, and I'm doing my presentation today, December 2nd, 2014, on genetically modified food and labeling. Genetically modified foods are altered in labs to change their genetic makeup. They were introduced in hopes of a higher production of crops since the crops would be resistant to weeds and pests. The promise of needing fewer herbicides and pesticides was broken when the weeds and pests became resistant to the chemicals and forced GMO crop producers to use more, not less. The 7 most produced GMO crops are corn, soybeans, canola, cotton, sugar beets, alfalfa, Hawaiian papaya, zucchini, and yellow crookneck squash. Corn and soy are the most common since they are used in about 90% of human food and nearly 100% of animal feed. The organic food industry grew at a rate of 10.2% in 2012, whereas the U.S. food sales grew at a rate of 3.7%. The problem has become twofold for the organic market. One, they are trying to prevent cross-contamination from neighboring GMO crops, and two, the deep pockets of companies like Monsanto, who can outspend them on campaigns to prevent legislation from being passed. Monsanto is the biggest monetary supporter of the campaign against passing GMO labeling legislation. They are also the largest producer of GMO seeds and produce chemical products such as Roundup, which is encouraged to use on GMO crops. The lack of an updated FDA policy in 22 years is concerning. In an age where people want to know what they are consuming in all areas, why is this being treated any differently? The FDA allows companies to voluntarily label their products, but to date, no company has willingly labeled their GMO product. We will look at further the states that have made attempts at GMO labeling initiatives and why many have failed so far, and how the food market could be affected by changes or by no changes. Connecticut and Maine both passed labeling laws that have a trigger clause, meaning there are measures that must be met before it will actually become a law. The 3 triggers are 4 other states must enact similar legislation, one of the 4 states must share a border with one of the states, and the combined population of the northeastern states that enact GMO labeling laws must total more than 20 million based on the 2010 census. Vermont, on the other hand, did not include a trigger clause. In April 2014, Vermont's Senate Judiciary Committee unanimously voted to move the bill forward. The bill will be going to the Appropriations Committee and then to a Senate vote. If it is passed, it will go into effect July 1, 2016. California, Washington, Oregon, and Colorado all had voter legislation fail. Both Washington and Oregon lost by very small margins. We will go into the Oregon legislation more in a minute, but also 64 countries have passed GMO labeling legislation, including 15 nations in the European Union, Japan, China, and Russia, leaving the U.S. to be one of the last developed countries to not enact any sort of law. Oregon's Measure 92 failed by a 1.2% margin, while Colorado's Proposition 105 failed by a 36% margin. Oregon's initiative states that their agricultural economy is the 3rd most diverse among the states. 225 agricultural commodities are produced in Oregon. They go on to state that preserving the identity and quality of Oregon's products and exports is crucial to their economic well-being. The organic food market accounted for $31.5 billion in sales in 2012. Also in 2012, organic dairy grew at a rate of 7.1%, as opposed to the 6% growth rate of the U.S. dairy market. The initiative added that a trade industry data showed that over the long term, organic farming is more profitable and economically secure than conventional farming, and that the risk of contamination can damage the public's confidence in organic products, which would undermine the job-creating, economy-boosting growth of the organic market. Opponents of the initiative spent more than 2.5 times as much money into their campaign. According to Jim Moore, a political science professor at Pacific University, if labeling ultimately comes down to a state-by-state battle, labeling backers will find themselves facing long odds. The anti-labeling companies have almost limitless funds and will continue to fight legislation, but supporters have said they are prepared to continue and persuade the federal government to step in and create national guidelines. The FDA has failed to take action on the petition filed, but it has sparked the state's initiative. Center for Food and Safety, a senior attorney, George Kimbrell, stated that people want to know if their food has been genetically engineered for numerous reasons, all important. For example, because they have health concerns since the FDA does no testing on these foods, because they know genetically engineered crops cause harm to the environment, through massively increasing pesticides and other means, because they think the lack of labeling is deceptive, and because they believe they have the same right as people all over the world. They are right. They do have a right to know. And today's exciting news is that it won't cost them anything to get that information. A study concluded that the cost of labeling will be about $2.30 per person per year, which is less than the cost of a gallon of milk. This was one of the opponents' main rationale for preventing legislation, but it was also disproved by the fact that the 64 other countries that have passed legislation have not reported higher food costs. Furthermore, studies about GMOs are only about 16 years old. There needs to be more independent studies on the effects this could have on the human body. There are 7 unexpected effects potentially caused by genetic engineering. Toxicity. Each genetic insertion creates the possibility that formerly non-toxic elements in food could become toxic. Allergic reactions. Allergens can be transferred to previously safe foods and create new allergic responses. There have been reported cases that showed a gene from a Brazil nut was engineered into soybeans and caused allergic reactions in people with nut allergies. Antibiotic resistance. Almost all genetically engineered foods contain antibiotic-resistant markers to help the producers identify whether the new genetic material has actually been transferred. The result of the resistance to current antibiotics could result in an increase in the spread of infections and diseases in the human population. Immunosuppression. 22 leading scientists recently declared that animal test results link genetically engineered foods to immunosuppression. Cancer. Several hormones have been approved in the use of genetically engineered dairy products. Both Canada and Europe have found that this can be an important factor in the growth of breast cancer, prostate cancer, and colon cancer. And lastly, loss in nutrition. Genetic engineering can alter the nutritional value of food, referred to as an undesirable alteration in the level of nutrients. In my opinion, we have a right to know what we are putting into our bodies. Food is not only something we should enjoy, but it is also what keeps us going and maintains our health. It is one thing for someone to knowingly choose to ingest food that could have lost nutritional value or caused their body to be resistant to antibiotics. It is another to leave them in the dark and allow them to unknowingly put themselves or their family at risk. As legislation for this grows, it will become a more talked about issue, and hopefully as people become more educated, the FDA will have no choice but to enact labeling laws. In conclusion, passing legislation, as I have stated earlier, will take time due to the fundraising battle between the supporters and opponents. U.S. citizens want and deserve to know if there are GMOs in their food. And lastly, the organic market will likely grow with or without labeling and produce more job opportunities. GMO labeling will not cause consumers a significant cost increase, so all food in the market will likely remain balanced and continue to go through the organic market. Thank you.